This is Midnight Broadcast. I'm your voice in the static, Victor, your guide through the fog, and tonight, we've left the lights on just in case. And tonight, we pick up a signal not meant to be heard. A whisper through static. A voice from nowhere and everywhere. Tonight's story is cerebral, atmospheric, and strange. This is Signal from Station Echo. Somewhere in the folds of time, a transmission keeps playing, and someone is still listening. The man who would come to be known as Vincent Morrow lived alone at the edge of the desert, in a weather-beaten trailer parked beside a defunct relay station. Station Echo, as it had once been called, sat crumbling under rusted antennae and sun-bleached paint, forgotten by the world. It had once transmitted news and weather reports to remote regions, but the station had gone dark in 1983. Vincent didn't mind. He wasn't there for company. He wasn't there for the sunrises or the quiet. He was there because of the signal. He'd first heard it 3 years ago, while scanning shortwave frequencies during a sleepless night. It came at 3:13 a.m., a soft, rhythmic tone, followed by garbled syllables that sounded almost like a voice. Almost. He recorded it, obsessed over it, replayed it hundreds of times. The signal was faint but regular, like a heartbeat. It didn't match any known transmission. Vincent had once worked in defense communications. He knew what interference looked like. He knew what a test pattern sounded like. This wasn't either. Something about it felt intentional, like someone, or something, was trying to reach out. After quitting his job and selling nearly everything he owned, he relocated to the station where the signal was strongest. Since then, he had spent every night with his headphones on, waiting. Most nights, the signal returned at precisely 3:13, sometimes stronger, sometimes fainter. Occasionally, it didn't come at all, and those nights unnerved him more than the ones where it did, because it meant the signal could change. It meant there was intent. Vincent kept detailed logs, waveform analysis, timestamps, even lunar phases. He adjusted antenna angles, swapped out receivers, built makeshift amplifiers. He became something between scientist and monk, meditating on static. In his notebooks, he called the source simply the speaker. Not a person, necessarily, not even a being, just the one who spoke. Then, in late October, the message changed. It was no longer random syllables. It said his name. He played it back over and over. The voice, if it could be called that, was faint, mechanical, almost aquatic in quality. Vincent Morrow, hear us. He stopped sleeping after that. Neighbors, what few there were, started to worry. One of them, a woman named Delia from the gas station 20 miles out, drove by with groceries once a week. She found Vincent thinner, paler, eyes bloodshot. He barely spoke. When he did, it was about patterns, about transmissions layered beneath others, signals inside signals. She stopped visiting. The desert winter came, the nights grew colder, and still Vincent waited. He began to dream of the signal. Not just hearing it, but being inside it, surrounded by endless rippling waves of sound. Sometimes he saw images, floating towers, inverted cities, lights blinking in mathematical precision. He started drawing them on his walls. Circles, spirals, grids. Then one night, the signal didn't come. Narrator. He waited until dawn. Nothing. The following night, still nothing. Vincent was hollow-eyed, frantic. He climbed onto the station's roof to adjust the antenna manually. In his journal, his writing had changed. Slanted, feverish. They were listening. I was getting closer. Why did they stop? On the third night, just past 3 a.m., the signal returned. But it was louder. Clearer. Vincent, you found us. Then silence. And then coordinates. Narrator. He traced them deep into the desert, an area not on any map. No roads, no towns, just sand, rock, and heat. He packed water, supplies, a recorder, and left at dawn. He didn't leave a note. The sun rose and fell. No one saw Vincent again. But 3 nights later, at exactly 3:13 a.m., the signal changed once more. Now, it was a loop. A repeating message. "We are Station Echo. We hear you." And faintly, behind the static, a voice. His voice. Vincent Morrow, calling out to anyone still listening. This has been Signal from Station Echo, an original story brought to you by Midnight Broadcast. Some voices fade, some voices echo, long after the speaker has gone. The desert does not care for explanations. It buries things. Heat waves distort the sky, and time folds in strange ways beneath a sun that watches like an indifferent god. Vincent's truck was found a week later, abandoned near an outcropping of rock that locals called Devil's Spine. The keys were still in the ignition. A journal sat on the passenger seat, its final pages filled with coordinates, frequency ranges, and a single phrase repeated in increasingly erratic handwriting. "We are Station Echo." There were no tracks leading away from the vehicle, no signs of struggle. Only the wind, whispering through the brush, and the old receiver that still hummed faintly in the back seat, tuned to 3.13 megahertz. No one could explain how it was powered. The truck's battery had long since died. Delia came when she heard. She recognized the truck. She sat in the front seat and opened the journal with shaking hands. She had known Vincent for years, had once shared coffee with him on the back step of the gas station, had once almost believed he'd ask her to dinner. She flipped through the pages. Charts, notes, sketches of strange machines, towers shaped like tuning forks, rings intersecting in impossible geometry, and one last page, torn, smeared, but legible. "If I reach them, I'll send word." Delia turned on the receiver. At 3:13 a.m., the message played. "We are Station Echo. We hear you." And beneath it, a whisper. "Delia." She threw the radio from the window, heart thudding. The message did not play again. Narrator. That should have been the end of it, but it wasn't. In the months that followed, shortwave operators from as far as Iceland to rural Argentina began to report a strange recurrence. A faint transmission, always at 3:13 a.m. local time, regardless of time zone. It began with a pulse, like a synthetic heartbeat, followed by a series of tones, then a voice. Sometimes the voice was male, sometimes female, sometimes indiscernible, but the message always ended the same. "We are Station Echo. We hear you." Academics grew curious. A few astrophysicists theorized the signal might be bouncing off the ionosphere in ways not yet understood. Others suggested it was a hoax, perhaps a pirate station using a rotating schedule. But no equipment could triangulate the source. No one could locate where it originated. Because every time someone tried, the signal changed. Sometimes it would stop altogether. Other times, it would speak directly to the one listening, by name. "Olivia, we hear you." "Dr. Hashimoto, you're close. Do not be afraid." It began to feel less like a broadcast and more like a conversation, like something was waiting on the other end. Not transmitting, but receiving. In New Mexico, a retired physicist named Ben Card began to publish papers on the phenomenon. He dubbed it echo persistence, the apparent ability of the signal to reappear in altered forms depending on the listener. His last published article posed a single question. What if we're not tuning into something? What if something is tuning into us? Ben disappeared 2 weeks later. His apartment was untouched, his notes gone. But his shortwave set remained on, speaker humming with faint static. At 3:13 a.m., it came. "Ben, we heard you." The government said nothing publicly, but FOIA requests revealed a curious uptick in communication surveillance related to unlicensed frequency patterns. A blacked-out memo referenced Project Echo Frame, but no further documentation was recovered. Still, the signal persisted. A college student in Ontario uploaded a clip of the transmission to an online forum. It went viral, tagged as an ARG or marketing campaign. But then users began to report that their versions of the clip didn't match. Some heard names whispered. Others claimed the static resolved into words. Personal ones, childhood memories, dead languages. A linguist reported hearing a sentence in her mother's voice. She's waiting in the signal. She didn't sleep after that. Delia, meanwhile, moved away from the desert. She tried to leave it behind. The journal, the voices, the ache of a man who had unraveled in silence. But one night, while driving across Nevada, her car radio flipped to static on its own. It was an old analog dial. She hadn't touched it. The static pulsed. Then came his voice. "Delia, I found them." She pulled over and sobbed into the steering wheel, overcome not with fear, but longing. He had found what he was looking for. He had gone where the rest of them hadn't dared follow. Station Echo was never a place. It was a state of listening. A doorway opened not by signal, but by attention. And once you hear it, really hear it, it hears you back. There were those who sought it out deliberately, a scattered group, ham radio enthusiasts, fringe scientists, insomniacs with nothing left to lose. They called themselves the Receivers. No official membership, no website, only a quiet understanding. Once you heard the signal, you were part of something. You had been chosen or marked. They shared frequency ranges, logs of their experiences, maps with shaded areas they believed were hot zones. But each encounter was different. Some heard music, distorted lullabies that shifted key mid-measure. Others heard entire conversations in languages they didn't know, but somehow understood. A man in Wales claimed to hear the sound of his wife's breathing. She'd died 20 years before. Each receiver believed the signal was showing them something, speaking directly to their memory, their fear, their longing. But it wasn't all wonder. One receiver, a former linguist named Mariana Reyes, began to hear the signal even when her radio was off. It followed her, through vents, through humming refrigerators, through the white noise of crowded rooms. The signal was no longer a broadcast. It had become internal. She scrawled notes obsessively in the margins of old textbooks. Signal is recursive, self-aware. An echo only needs a shape to fill. On her last known day, Mariana sent an email to another receiver, containing only 3 words: "We are hosts." She vanished shortly after. By 2022, the signal had slipped into the lexicon of conspiracy forums and subreddits, caught somewhere between myth and digital campfire tale. But unlike most phenomena, it didn't die with disbelief. It adapted. Phone calls began dropping into voicemail boxes with no incoming number. Low pulses, then whispers. Audio files reported corrupted vinyl records with embedded frequencies that, when isolated, formed part of the station echo transmission. A podcaster played a clip on air as a curiosity. The next episode was never released. Listeners said they could still hear breathing during his sign-off. Theories exploded. Some believed the signal was extraterrestrial, an intelligence reaching out not from space, but from a dimension adjacent to sound itself. Others claimed it was terrestrial, a Cold War project meant to encode consciousness into waveform, a failed attempt at immortality. A few believed it was religious, the voice of God fragmented through technology, that humanity had finally built something sensitive enough to detect the whisper of the divine. But others, the oldest receivers, had stopped theorizing. They had come to understand something deeper. The signal wasn't just contacting us, it was mapping us, learning the frequency of the human soul. And still, every night at 3:13 a.m., somewhere in the world, a voice is heard. Sometimes faint, sometimes clear. We are Station Echo. We hear you. And sometimes, if you've listened long enough, it says your name. In the spring of 2025, a graduate student named Elliot Chung submitted an audio analysis thesis to an obscure university archive. It never went public, never went through peer review. But a compressed file of his appendices circulated among the receivers. Elliot had mapped a dozen known recordings of the Station Echo signal from across decades. 1950s ham intercepts, 1980s VHS bleed-through, 2003 naval sonar glitches, 2020s satellite ghost packets. When overlaid, they formed a spectral lattice, a structure. It resembled no language, no code, but it was architecture, sound arranged in the form of a place. A place Elliot described in his final note as auditory topography, a temple not built of stone, but of tone. In his last interview, he said, "It isn't just transmitting, it's inviting. It wants us to build the rest, to give it walls, rooms, memory, meaning." Then, like the others before him, Elliot disappeared. His dorm was found empty, headphones still humming, a waveform still active on screen, labeled only Return Path. We are left, as always, with echoes. They gather in us. They pass through us. A forgotten transmission, a skipped heartbeat, a whisper heard when no one else is home. Vincent Morrow may be gone, but his voice lingers. On clear nights, if you tune the dial just right, past the static and into the space between numbers, you might hear it. Still calling, still mapping, still listening. And if the signal calls you by name, you'll know. You've been marked, you've been received. This was Signal from Station Echo, an original story brought to you by Midnight Broadcast. Some voices fade, some voices echo, long after the speaker has gone. Until then, keep the dial open and keep listening. This is Victor. We'll see you next time.